What could be cut from the federal budget to help manage debt? Interest on the debt will soon pass military spending as the third largest line item in combined discretionary mandatory spending, behind Social Security and Medicare. The Fed interest rate is set high to slow inflation but also attract buyers of U.S. bonds which had been dropping. Debt to GDP ratio is climbing astronomically, which means a majority of government investments aren't paying off. Taxes can be raised, but historically the U.S. tends to take it around 17% of GDP each year regardless of tax rates. Maybe it could be squeezed up to 20%, but the problem still remains. Which leaves us with taking a hard look at the budget and asking, not just what we want, but also what can we afford? What are some cuts or program reforms you'd like to see? Which would you save? Why is cutting spending the only option? The deficit and debt are so high mainly because of unwise tax cuts under GWB and Trump. It seems like the GOP cuts taxes, which raises the deficit, then cries that we're broke, so the Democrats must give up things that people want and need and cut spending. Maybe we should question the starve the beast ethos that got us here. A hard look isn't really a hard look if the only thing being considered is cuts to spending. Consider too who we owe the debt to. Mostly to ourselves. Corporate welfare, all the subsidies and tax cuts to already wealthy industries like energy and finance. And of course, our stunningly inefficient and bloated military. The only federal agency that has never passed an audit. Corn subsidies, especially ethanol subsidies. Subsiding corn syrup to the point it's cheaper than sugar is literally killing millions of Americans and costs a tremendous amount of money. That land would be better used for other crops. Ethanol has a larger carbon footprint than the oil it replaces and the small advantage it provided. As in energy independence was completely supplanted by new drilling technology a couple years after the gas requirement passed. The tax cuts to billionaires. The issue is taxes for the super wealthy have been on a discount fire sale. In fact, so much so we got guys building penis rockets to go to space. I would rather increase taxes than cut spending. Most of the things we spend on are important and starved for funding. More taxes for the rich. More taxes for businesses. And more taxes for everyone else. Realistically, we need to tax everyone more to fund all the stuff we want. America lives in a weird low-tax fantasy where we all actually end up paying more in the long run. I also wonder why cuts. We are using interest rate hikes to suck money out of the system. Why not use tax increases to do the same thing while also addressing deficit? No spending cut will reduce the debt. The only viable option is to close tax loopholes, remove tax cuts for the wealthy, and fund the IRS to the point that rich people can be audited effectively. Throw the book at offenders and hold CEOs accountable for shady tax practices at their corporations. Go back to pre-Reagan tax brackets. Current estimates are that over $400 billion of taxes per year are uncollected, and that's with the absolutely laughable tax code for the wealthy and corporations. In the UK there are over 1,180 tax reliefs in operation, but just 365 have official costings. This is from a Treasury committee published in July. I expect there are plenty of these at play in the US as well. Analysis found that 105 of the 1,180 reliefs cost the public purse a total of £195 billion. Fuck off with this shit. Only answer is military. Fuck everything else listed. The answer is glaringly obvious: raise taxes on the wealthy. The Bush and Trump tax cuts are at the core of the deficits. 10 of the defense budget. In its enormities, 10 must be waste. The defense budget is bigger than the 10 next countries combined. Among those 10 are China, Russia, Germany, Poland, India, Saudi Arabia, etc. Every time I write a check to pay my taxes, I remember that billionaires don't pay as much, literally, as I do. They use their golden loopholes and bought and paid for Republicans to make sure they never pay their share. The deficit can be repaired. It can be completely wiped out, but only if taxes are raised and the massive giveaways that Trump and other Republicans shoveled into the overstuffed gullets of the corporations and billionaires are rescinded. You want to cut something? Cut the giveaways to the rich. Their fat asses don't need them. Farm subsidies. Oil subsidies. Lower military spending. Currently spend more than countries 210 combined. Undo the Bush-Trump handouts to the rich. End the cap on Social Security taxes. Create a program to discourage and punish tax havens' loopholes. Deficit will disappear. All I can say is if you want more taxes on billionaires, then you have to vote for candidates who will do this. Republicans have been skating on the propaganda that they are more fiscally responsible for decades, while the opposite is true. Cut? Nothing. We already have some of the most anemic government services compared to most first-world countries. The United States has some of the lowest revenue among first-world countries. Raise revenue by higher taxes on the wealthiest Americans they do not pay a fair percentage of their income. Removal of SS tax cap. Removal of legacy subsidizes for industries with record-breaking profits. Allow Medicare, Medicaid to negotiate all drug prices. Enact windfall taxes for anti-American companies who seek to gauge and weaken society. So cutting hurts everyday people and the working poor. Raising revenue hurts no one. Military spending. $1 trillion to fight who? China? Neither America or China will ever go to war. Both economies need each other too much. Russia? Keep funding Ukraine and Russia. Management of debt that will never be paid back and is just a bunch of zeros and ones on a cold dar basement server. The average Joe doesn't care. We've all been sold a fool's system. Government should never have a surplus. Money in the bank is meaningless. Proof? Stage 3 tax cuts and pandemic spending. We're all fools. Military spending is a good answer, but the truth is far simpler: nothing. The real answer is that we are currently running a grossly regressive tax scheme, and fixing it would put us well on track to fixing the national debt. When speaking of debt, income is just as important as expenses. This is such an absurd premise. The debt is incurred as much by the Reagan, Bush, Trump tax cuts as anything else. Each of them left the country in a great deal more debt than when they came in office, and the nature of the beast is that they continue to amplify as years pass. The debt is a two-way street, as is your personal debt. Make more money, you pay it down faster. It's both revenue and what you owe. Reverse the tax cuts and look at cutting expenditures in equal measures. Regardless of the screaming by the rich shills, it won't hurt the economy one bit. Here's an idea: how about we concentrate on making some money on the global market? Can we try that? Let's see what that looks like. How about corporate welfare and subsidies? Subsidizing farmers and propping up crop prices. Let the market decide. All executive branch bureaucracy that is duplicated at the state level. This means EPA, Department of Education, FBI, etc. Consolidate all intelligence agencies into one agency. Stop all discretionary spending. End the earmark system in Congress. All bills must pass individually. Adopt the fair tax and shut the IRS down. The mandatory programs are where the astronomical growth is happening. Discretionary spending can be trimmed for sure, and there's plenty of waste and corruption there, but it's the mandatory programs that are exploding. Reforming Social Security and Medicare is the unpopular yet necessary answer.